Hey everyone, Rick here, and folks, welcome to my cavern. Alright folks, before we dive into too much detail about the caverns themselves, this is how the adventure begins. This is Falconrest Watchtower, the ruins of which the bandits and smugglers have been using the cellar to store their smuggled goods when trouble began. The party will begin outside. There might even be a little icebreaker scenario outside. Maybe a simple combat against some bandits that were keeping watch outside. This is ideally an introductory Dicey Depths scenario, so whether you are campaigning and your adventurers are experienced, you can tailor the difficulty of this up and down pretty easily. But it would be a fantastic introductory scenario. So, the whole point of which we have been campaigning already and have been journaling our efforts so far. With one session down, we discovered, and this is why this cavern, as you're about to see, is going to be 11 rooms, but, 11 encounters long, underground ruins. There's a whole dice system in the Dicey Depths 2nd edition campaign rules, which I won't go into too much detail here. I may do a how to play Dicey Depths video in the future, but essentially, we found out that in this specific province where we're located, here's a map of the land, numbered. Every province has a name. We're going province by province. This province, in addition to maybe some town and some other encounters, specifically has Falconrest Watchtower, 11 encounters in a subterranean environment. We figured that out so far. We're about to dive in. So that's part of our campaign, but you can also use it as just an introductory scenario. And it'll start up here, right up top. It's a fantastic way to get everyone to, grab their character sheets, fill them out. Here is a quick and rough, pause that, save that. There's your Dicey Depths Express rules. That has basically everything you need to know to get started. But up here, we'll be rolling our characters. Attack. 2d6, you take the higher of the two, in this case 3. You'll be able to mulligan one of these as you roll them out. Tokens, everyone grabs their starting items, gold, whatever the case may be, and then it's time. Again, maybe potentially a introductory scenario above ground, but it's time to get to what everyone wants to do. Let's dive into the subterranean cavern environment. Alright folks, here it is, the caverns beneath Falconrest Watchtower. I built this cavern out of multiple Kickstarter 1 and Kickstarter 2 sets from Dwarven Forge. So this is all Dwarvenite pieces, first from their original Dungeons Kickstarter and from their original Caverns Kickstarter. If you can believe it, there's not a single actual piece, to my knowledge, with the exception of maybe 1 or 2 specialized pieces from any other of their Kickstarters. I'm not including accessories in that. But the actual basic building blocks of Dungeons and Caverns is what you see here. I'm not entirely sure how many sets of each there are, but let's get this down off the tripod and take a closer look. So, right beneath the Watchtower itself, the ruins of Falconrest Watchtower, is this cellar. So this cellar mini dungeon complex, stairs coming down into this open area here. This is encounter 1. So again, the goal with creating this was I wanted 11 total encounters with a boss encounter at the end. Can you guess where the boss encounter ends up being? Yes, if you guessed that fiery, hellish looking pit over there, that's absolutely where it ends up. But trying to keep things looking as organic as possible, of course, table space was a premium. I butted up against all 4 edges, so there wasn't a whole lot of room to do a lot of the curvy and twisty cavern passages as I would have liked. A lot of them just end up being a couple pieces long, you know, maybe even just a piece like this one over here, one single passage piece. Oh, was that a hidden passageway behind the waterfall? It absolutely was. So if you have any questions about this, because I have all the things I want to talk about in the back of my mind, but I'm probably going to forget something. So if you have any questions, apart from how many Dwarven Forge sets did this take, because I have no idea. Original dungeon, Dwarvenite pieces here, and all the cavern pieces, including the water, including the fire, the lava caverns. And so no, you know, obviously when they have all these Kickstarters. They had the Dungeon of Doom, which had a lot more cool dungeon pieces. They had Caverns Deep, which expanded on the caverns. And I didn't end up grabbing any of that. So I had to do as best I could with what I had, which means the walls especially, I only have 3 different straight walls. The basic, this kind of pooled one, and then another one that kind of looks like this here, that kind of butts out a little bit, that might have some minerals or something attached to it. So 3 different straight walls is all I had, and even fewer corners. I only have 2 different kinds of corners. No, I'm sorry, 3. I lied. Because I have this basic corner here. I have a pooled corner, like that one. And then I have this just abrupt corner, like this. So, in the end, even with just, and floors, just 3 different kinds of floors. We have this very rough floor, the more cobblestoney floor, and then an elevated floor. But with 3 different floors, 3 different straight walls, 3 different corners, I think it still ended up looking pretty good overall. I love the contrast of the water. I think those waterfalls honestly look pretty darn good. And then, of course, the lava. I wanted to do a little extra over there, so when I was putting this together, this was the first chamber that I built. I knew I wanted a 12th boss chamber. In a cavern, I was thinking stereotypical, core of the earth, you know, magma, all that kind of stuff, fire. So that's what I went with here. This room is far bigger than it honestly needs to be, probably. But I wanted something to be epic right there at the end. The next thing I built was the Cellar of the Watchtower, and then filled in everything else connecting them together. There are puzzles embedded into this. If you know Dicey Depths, you know it is combat focused. So the majority of the time, that's what we're going to be doing, rolling handfuls of dice, battling monsters. My goals here were to have the 11 encounter rooms, a 12th boss chamber, and passageways connecting every room. Because in the Dicey Depths Dungeons rules, every passageway could potentially be trapped. We roll to see if we can disarm it. If we fail, each adventurer has to negotiate the trap. So I wanted a passageway to represent moving from room to room, and there could be a trap in the passageway. But anyway, so that was my goal, and I was actually able to do that pretty well. I was kind of surprised. I was worried after I built that room and this room, was I going to be able to build 10 more rooms? The pieces, no problem. I mean, I still have tubs of the cavern pieces left over. I'd probably still have a third. I could add on another third, if not, I don't know, 2/3 more cavern pieces probably. It was just table space. I have enough room to make 10 more rooms decently sized enough to have an entire party in them. And I didn't put our party members down here, but let's just say here they are. Here are adventurers moving down into the caverns below Falconrest Watchtower. So here we are in the cellar of the Watchtower. Of course, this whole adventure began, and I won't go into too much story detail. Also, if you plan on playing this with me, turn the video off. Because there may be some... No, I'm just kidding. Oh, but also, you'll notice some of these pieces are really high. Of course, all this is built, look at this, with this table. Dwarven Forge works perfectly with this table. So as you can see, it is completely flat. I had that topper on. The only thing is, super high pieces like this, I just have to take off and put to the side when the top is on. But when we take the top off, we put that back there. But I did notice there was one more little piece over here that I forgot to set back up again. But there we go. That's much better. Oops, that one other thing you may notice is the accessories for this are primarily, if not entirely, I mean, apart from the Dwarven Forge mushrooms and stalagmites, you're going to have most of the accessories, oh, and besides these columns, are going to be the Warlock tiles or 4D settings from WizKids pre-painted accessories. Because if you watch my last video about how I just organized all that stuff, I was really keen to use it, and I thought, what better way than now? So, I won't go into the backstory too much, but suffice to say, smugglers had been using this cavern, but they didn't need the entire cavern, so they kind of started out here. They spread out, maybe made a little camp. They found a great little way to maybe store some of the more valuable stuff over in an alcove. But then they started getting a little too deep. Then they noticed maybe they weren't alone in the cavern. They started noticing ritual chambers and whatnot. So they barricaded that up. The chief was like, all right, no one go beyond this point. They also set up a little den over here of torturing victims. And the chief himself set up camp way the heck over there. So if you notice, look at this. I love this piece. It is a perfect transition piece to go from dungeon to cavern. Oh, yes. So, in ages past, that was probably, open or whatnot. But it had since been bricked up. But over time, people had chipped away at it, and here we go. So the smugglers started to get in there. They may have dug a little too deep, finding things they're not supposed to find. By the time the adventurers get down here, all hell has broken loose. So there will be little journals scattered throughout. There's one here. There's one at that campsite. There's perhaps a little scroll. Someone wrote down some quick notes over there. So going into what is kind of the goal here is there is a great evil growing in power. Why not just turn and run, right? Why not just go back to the tavern, let someone else deal with this? Well, the evil is growing, it's swelling, and if it isn't taken out now, it'll become too powerful to take out later. So that's kind of the whole reason why, no, there's no turning back now. We've got to go down here. These bandits have awoken something. In fact, a lot of the bandits have already left. The encounters that the heroes are going to find down here are going to be monsters, apparitions, things that the demon lord not yet fully powered and able to reveal himself or herself, but has summoned to, protect it. So what is going on? Well, you read some of these notes, like this first one here in the little warden's office might say something like, just the other day, the chief ran past us, because here we go. I know, I'm so scatterbrained. What I was going to say was, here is the path that it takes to get all the way back to this last chamber where the bandit chief had set up shop. You'll notice a treasure chest already been opened. That's because the chief is gone. Especially how close. He was hearing vibrations and he was smelling sulfur. He knew something was up. He took his loot and dashed. Ran right past the warden's office, up the stairs, and who knows, that could be who they fight above ground right outside the watchtower, was the chief, the bandit chief, running off. But anyway, so they had found, when they were down here, they had found an artifact. It's this artifact right here on top of those crates. Because here's a fantastic little piece. This fountain right outside the main boss chamber. Look at that snake passageway. I love that piece. This piece, it looks like one intact piece to the naked eye, but no, these stones are removable. And there are 3 totems that can be put into place on top of there. And those 3 things being put there are the keys to unlocking the final boss chamber. So here's one. The bandits had no idea what they discovered. There it is. That's the first one. And obviously, so that'll be the easiest one to nab, was the one they already found. And the heroes will read about in some journals and whatnot about someone having discovered that, not sure what it is. And then another bandit, maybe a little intuitive, starts having visions about how to actually use these to unlock the final chamber. Maybe memories implanted into his brain. Well, the chief didn't like that whatsoever. So he was locked away in a cage, and in fact his corpse is still in here right now. And next to him, of course, is going to be his diary. So he wrote down the notes, but you have to find out how to get into this chamber first of all. Look at that, it's blocked. How do you do that? Well, in one of these other notes or journals the adventurers come across, they'll talk about how the bandit chief locked him away, and only he has the key to this thing. And this is, again, Dwarven Forge at its finest. This hag's head is magnetic. And so, when they do eventually when the heroes eventually get back there, they'll have this, and then, watch this. Boom. And then there you have it. All right, well, we were too late. You know, they weren't sure if he was dead or alive. He is dead, but he wrote down his notes for future discovery. Again, every single one of these rooms is going to have a combat encounter inside of it. Look at these little devil imps. So the final boss is going to rise out of the lava, but there are 6 devil imps that they also have to deal with in that final battle. But anyway, so it's just a bunch of little things like that. So one of the notes, you know, we'll talk about where to find the original little totem piece. Another will say, well, what the heck do you even do with it? Because this lobby area that leads into the final boss chamber, it's itself is hidden. It's hidden behind one of these waterfall pieces. So you get through there, and then you go through these passageways. So these are just freestanding walls that I have the waterfalls resting on, which just looks so nice. But there's still 2 other totems, because as you can tell, there are 2 other spots. You remove those stones and put the totems in there. So where are the other 2? Well, one is, again, kind of easy, but it's going to take a little bit of trickery to get to. The chasm. So what someone may want to do is maybe grab the rope that they found at the dock, come through here, maybe tie one end here, sling it over to the other stalagmite over there, because then there is the other totem. And then where's the final totem? Well, this is the room that the bandit chief himself did not want anyone entering. You do enter it, though, and here you go. Sacrificial chamber. What is the riddle here? That's the little scroll. We'll read it off to the players. If you want to dissolve the illusion, you're going to have to sacrifice a little bit of yourself. I'm going to write it differently. I'm going to write it a little more mysteriously. But essentially, someone's going to have to take some damage on the ritual chamber, which will show that this cave-in over here was actually just an illusion. A very, very handy illusion. But then that is where the other totem rests, in that alcove back there. So that is the case, and as you can see, that is how the players will have to investigate every single room. Encounter 1 is going to be here. Encounter 2 in here. Doesn't matter if they go right or left. Eventually, they're going to have to get into this room to find the information here. But in order to unlock this chamber, they're going to have to go through 1, 2, 3 other chambers there. So that's all 4 chambers on that side done. These 2 center chambers done. You come this way into this chamber, done. To get that piece, go into that chamber. This is the only one that doesn't have a passageway, because again, when you move from room into a passageway, disarm the trap or face the trap. Move into the next room, combat. Move into a passageway, combat. Move into a room, trap, combat. Combat, passageway, trap, room, combat, passageway, trap. So it's the same thing over and over again, different traps each time, different monster encounters each time. This one is just going to be a trap area, even though there's not necessarily a passageway piece there, but these are 2 separate areas. So to get to that totem piece, that's another one done. So this whole entire side now has now been discovered and dealt with, and then to go through here, to get to this one, done. Passageway up to that one, done. And then when you're ready to go, you move into this final chamber, done. That is all 11 encounters. That guarantees the players are going to have to encounter all 11 rooms. And then once that's done, it's final boss time. So when I mentioned scaling the difficulty, I have little pools, and I should have brought them out here. In fact, let me go do that now. All right, so I have these little pools that you can put in strategic locations. If you know Dicey Depths, you know healing comes at a premium. You're either going to have an elixir, there are certain spells and enchantments and things like that, but for the most part, there is no, healing in between rooms or what have you. So in this instance, you can place 1, 2, or all 3. You as the DM or whatever can decide. Again, Dicey Depths doesn't need a DM. Everything is dice generated. In fact, keep your eyes peeled, though I'm probably going to post this after I post maybe something else. I was going to do a live let's set up the dungeon thing, because if you've ever watched Dicey Depths before, normally, okay, I move into the room, it's encounter time. We roll to see what the monsters are, how many there are. In this case, that's one of the things that take the longest, because we have those little cards. We'll roll the dice for the monsters, set them all up. I kind of want to do that ahead of time, but even because I'm going to be a player as well, so it'd just be nice to have each room pre-populated with what's going to be in there. So ahead of time, I'm thinking I'm going to do all that rolling and make little cards or something for each room and for each monster already, which is why I have these. I freaking love these tokens that have numbers on them. So they'll be upside down, these skulls. There'll be 1 in each room. And when the heroes enter a room, you flip them over. All right, that's number 13. Consult a little table. It'll tell you what a 13 is. You can pop the monster figures into the room, and I'll have the cards for those monsters already laid out with their stats, their initiative bonus, HP, attack, all that kind of stuff. So those are going to be so handy just to have this all done already. And still a little mystery there with these tokens in each room. But anyway, so you can place these out. So for example, using this as an introductory scenario, if everyone just generated their level 0 adventurer right now just to do this, I'm probably going to lay out all 3 of these, honestly. And I'll just put one, boom, boom, boom. Once it's used, the water, you sipped the water and there's no more. Once everyone's taken a drink, heal yourself, and then that's it. That also means they're going to have to backtrack. Maybe I didn't need this when I entered this room, because maybe it was just the, boom, 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 4th room I entered. But we may have to backtrack, which is also important to keep note of which passageways are trapped, because even if you navigate through the trap entering the room, you're going to have to navigate it again when you leave, and again if you ever want to come back to use this pool. So it's not just free will. Okay, we disarm this trap, I can now come and go as I... Well, okay, now if you disarm the trap, that is it. You don't have to re-disarm it again later. But if we triggered the trap and we navigated through it once and we've gone on our way and now we want to come over here and heal, it's not just a walk in the park to come over here and heal. No, you're going to have to risk it. Is it worth the risk? You may take more wounds, and possibly die. If you're really low, is it, you may just want to go do it anyway. So that is my little concession, and I love these little pools. They're cavern-like, so I can pop them out around here. Don't drink the water in the main causeway, though. That is dangerous. But anyway, so those are my little pools. All right, what else was I going to say about all this? So we talked about the reason for coming down here. We talked about how this works. So again, in Dicey Depths, even though Dwarven Forge is fantastic, everything is gridded, there is no tactical movement per se. It's just room to passage to room to passage to room. Combat, again, is also... Watch some of my other Dicey Depths videos on combat. Again, this is... I think I showed the rule book. This is now what I call Dicey Depths 2nd edition. What's new? And again, I may do a video on how to play Dicey Depths, because if you've ever seen any of my Dicey Depths videos, you can see that you can play it with a set of dice, a pen and a paper, and just have a blast. But... throwing in 3D terrain like this is a lot of fun too. But so what's changed over time? There are now 10 character classes. So in addition to the ranger, rogue, wizard, and knight, there is now the druid, the barbarian, the rune master, the cleric, oh god, I'm forgetting 2 more. I can't think of them right now. But anyway, so there's 10 different character classes. The summoner, I think it's called. But anyway, so there's a lot going on. Oh, the bard, of course. I think one's... Oh, the druid, not a summoner, the druid who can summon animal companions. And then lastly, the bard. So yeah, it's a fantastic mix of different adventures, all with different abilities. Also, experience points are generated in a pool now. So when you have your party of adventurers, it doesn't matter which adventurer dealt the last blow to a monster. Everyone in the party got the experience from that. That way, when you have the rogue who always attacks first, you know, at the beginning of combat, jumping in there with the dagger, finishing off some monster constantly over and over again, taking all the XP. No, it's just pooled now, and everyone gets a split of that. And that's just worked out so much better. There's a bunch of other little things too. Also, there are no more monster types. There's just a set of abilities. 12 different abilities. So when we are going to roll, and I may again do this in a video, where we will go room by room and determine what is in each room, or not necessarily in each room, but what I'm going to have to roll up 11 encounters worth of monsters. And the way we'll do that is take a D12. Well, first we'll see if it's tier 1, it has 1 ability and D3 stats. Tier 2, it has 2 abilities and D6 stats. Tier 3 is 3 abilities and has boss-like stats, which is a whole different set of complications. And a tier 4 is like final boss level stats. It has double HP as what a normal boss or a tier 3 might have. So there's 4 tiers of enemies now, but you come up with what the actual enemy is based on their abilities. So if I roll up an ability that says something has poison and I roll its attributes and I see what those are, I may say, all right, well, those are going to be snakes, or those are going to be rats, or something like that. Or if I have something with a hardened armor where the first hit against it, in order to cause a wound, you have to have 2 successful hits. Something like that may be, you know, a battle armored troll or knight or ogre or something like that that can take a hit and needs 2 hits to cause a wound for the first wound in a combat against adventurer. So that's what I'll do. I'll roll ability or abilities for each room, how many monsters there are, what tier level they are, and then at that point I'll come up with, okay, these are goblins, these are kobolds, whatever the case may be. And that way you can keep it thematic, because you know what I used to do, and I still love, you have the whole bestiary all in one thing. And people, you know, they've made videos, and I could talk at length about this, where people say, yeah, let's talk about the realism of the dungeon and how it needs to have multiple exits and not all these things would be living next to each other. I mean, just have fun with it. Good God. But if having fun with it means you do those extra things, have at it. In this case, there are no other exits. Potentially there are, wherever the water's flowing from above, maybe if you traversed that would be where it is. I think that would be mostly if there was like an actual dungeon. If I did this entire thing as a dungeon, then sure, I would probably have multiple exits, because you realistically wouldn't want to have just one entrance and exit, where once that's sealed off, everyone's screwed, or whatever the case may be. Also, people ask, where do things go to the bathroom in a dungeon? Well, I actually do have a thing in the barracks area here where someone could use the restroom, though the monsters just probably piss in the water, which is why I said don't drink that water. Good Christ. But anyway, so yeah, what else? Is there anything else to discuss here? So we have all the 11 rooms, all the 11 encounters. I just think it looks so gorgeous, the different colors of the water and the lava, and how even with these basic cavern sets, again, folks, Caverns Deep from Dwarven Forge added so much more variety. But even without that, just the basic Caverns pieces, I think it looks fantastic. So I'll just kind of walk around. I know I've been talking forever, but I don't think I've even once walked over to the other side and kind of shown it from this angle. But the interior of this table, which is a BoardGameTables.com table that I got in 2015. It's a very basic table, but I absolutely love it. Every player area has a drawer. No cup holders, though, unfortunately. But when we actually play this, I'll pull out my little TV trays, and everyone can have a TV tray next to them to roll their dice or write down their stats or what have you. But this recessed area is exactly 5 by 3, 5 feet long, 3 feet wide. And so this is about as big of a setup as I can get inside of there. And again, the height is just, look at this. Look at that. Is that not just absolutely insane how perfect that is? And I did not order the depth of the recessed area for Dwarven Forge. It just happened to be perfect like that. Again, I had to take down some of the taller things, but look at this, like from this angle. Ooh, how freaking cool is that? So that is that. It turned out really well. It took a couple days to put it all together. I spent one day just laying it all out and the next day putting accessories out and figuring out where I wanted to put the bandit journals and where I wanted to put the totems to make sure that all 11 rooms got used, because again, in a Dicey Depths campaign setting, we're going province to province. And I'll talk a little bit now. If anyone's still watching at this point, you must be interested somewhat in what I'm doing, so maybe this will interest you also, is for a Dicey Depths campaign, we have the world map, and I showed that earlier, province by province. In the center province is the Great Evil. There are 39 total provinces in that world map, and minus the middle one, which will be the final boss of the whole campaign, there are 38 other provinces. When the adventurers enter a province, they roll to see what is in that province. And there's always going to be one inhabitation, a city, a town, a hamlet, a castle, a fortress, something like that, and 2 major investigative locations. One that can be a chain of encounters above ground, and one that is more of a dungeon variety. Not necessarily has to be subterranean, like this is a subterranean one, but more of a dungeon where there's room, passage, that kind of thing. Where the above ground one, there are no traps separated in passageways. It's just a series of overland encounters. And so you can do, the bandit the griffin has kidnapped someone's daughter or something, or a necromancer is about to raise the entire graveyard, or whatever the case may be. And so you roll to see how many encounters each of those are going to be. So you roll a d12 and you add 1. So it's a minimum of 2. So it could literally be just a short encounter. And the reward, because there is a monetary reward as well for whatever you do, and that reward is based on how lengthy the encounter is. So if it is a short encounter, that'll be quick for you to be able to resolve that province, but it is not going to be monetarily worth very much. In the inhabitations, you can spend money to stay at the inn, which heals you entirely without any problem. If you don't want to spend the money, or you can't afford a night in the inn for the party, you have to, well, you don't have to, but in order to rest and heal yourself, you'll have to camp. And there is a camping events situation where you roll a die and see if you get attacked in the night. You still heal, but then you have to face an encounter, which could, cause you a couple extra wounds before the next day's adventure. And in town, there's a bulletin board, a message board with odd jobs that you'll be rolling skill tests for based on some of your stats, like your speed stat. See if you can capture the livestock before the market opens, or what have you. And there could be bounties, just one-off combat encounters against a tier 3 or, I'm pretty sure it's tier 3, not just tier 4. Actually, it could be anything. You roll to see what tier of a bounty it is as well. And again, the reward for that corresponds to that, because you're collecting those silver and gold coins, because you are going to want to purchase items. The item deck, since I first created it, has really expanded it. I don't even know how many cards it is, 80 to 100 item cards now. So yeah, and the marketplace is fantastic because what I do is I grab 2 times the number of players worth of item cards, and I'll lay them out, and then we roll D6. Is it D6 or D4? I think it's D6, and just order it lowest to highest, and that's the number of silver coins each item costs. So you could get a good deal on some really good items in the marketplace, or maybe everything's really expensive and you'll have to wait till tomorrow. And then there is actually grinding. So in a situation like this, if you entered these caverns and halfway through you realized you just were not going to make it to the end, you can leave. If you leave an encounter like this without completing it, when you return, you will have to start all over again. So it's best to get your items and maybe a few levels under your belt before you start off on something like this. And grinding is a way to do it. Now, grinding in like a JRPG video game or something doesn't sound the most appealing. In this case, it is anything you can imagine, set your mind to. A one-off encounter. You just roll basically like we would roll to encounter in a room here. So we'll roll and see how many and what tier of monster it is. Roll for the ability or abilities of the monster or monsters and come up with a situation. All right, there are dryads in the grove and we need to go clear them out or something like that. And so you just come up with these one-off little encounters and do as many of those as you want, because those will give you experience points, first of all, and gold and silver. So you can get your experience leveled up, you can get some currency in your pockets to go to the market and purchase additional things, and then maybe give it another shot later. And then once both of the major locations in a province have been completed, then the party moves on to the next province, and you do that until the campaign is complete. And like I said, Dicey Depths doesn't need a dungeon master. You can just roll to see whatever it is you encounter. Everything is dice and table based. However, if you're like me, you like adding a little spice to things. And even as a player, because I am going to be playing in this, I do know where things are, but like I said, it doesn't matter, because in order to complete this, we're going to have to go through every room anyway. We're not going to end up missing anything. It just depends on which order we go. Maybe technically there could be a better order to go do things. I'll just keep my mouth shut. But, you know, if I had enough players where I couldn't play, then I would just sit out and just roll for the monsters, essentially. Because Dicey Depths plays best with 3 to 4. I wouldn't go any more than 4. 3 to 4 is the sweet spot, and it scales pretty well. Why? Because in just normal combat encounters, again, the XP is split. So with more adventurers, you're going to get less XP per combat, so you're going to level slower. But also in boss level battles, tier 3, tier 4, where the boss doesn't fight in initiative order, the boss attacks after each adventurer's action. So, and again, we rolled a target because everybody has a target value. That's how there doesn't have to be a DM, because the monsters have their own kind of built-in AI where they just everyone has a target value. So if you have a 3-person party like this, he'd be a 1 or a 2, 3 or 4, 5 or 6. Roll a d6 and see who it targets. And you do that for that's how all monsters act, but also bosses. So after each adventurer, if you have 4 adventurers, then that means the boss is going to activate 4 times instead of just 3. There actually is a new ability I've added to the monster potential abilities chart, which is intelligence, where the monster will target every single time the hero, the adventurer with the lowest HP. It always kind of bugged me when clearly this hero has 2 hit points left and the monster goes and says, I'll go ahead and attack this guy who's at near full health and still take, you know, all that in full damage from the entire party as I whittle you each down a little bit. No, let's kill that character. And that way it's out of the DM's hands anyway, because the DM, you know, you can't accuse the dungeon master or the game master of targeting somebody because it's still all the roll of a dice unless the monster or boss has intelligence. And then you better hope you have a knight in your party. And the knight isn't the one with the lowest HP and who can step in front of someone who's been targeted. Just look at that. Does that not look absolutely gorgeous? But anyway, as you can tell, I could just go on and on about how Dicey Depths is played and whatnot. But I just wanted to give some updates to the rules for those of you who have watched Dicey Depths videos in the past. And some of you have even sent me additional rules and things that you've done in your own games. And I think that is absolutely fantastic. And I'm just so glad that people are actually having fun with it. I constantly tweak things all the time. I was about to go in the room and grab the rules because I have written so many different variations. There's Dicey Depths, Dicey Depths Advanced, Dicey Depths of Mana, Dicey Depths Arena, other Dicey Depth editions or subversions, and just over time have been having a lot of fun with it. But this is it. I'm calling this, and I put it on the binder, Dicey Depths 2nd Edition. It has a little bit of everything. It has the campaign ability. It has the one-off encounter ability like this. I fully expect the first situation of using this to be the first and only time some people will play Dicey Depths, where we're all just going to roll up characters and we're going to go through this and see as far as we can get. There is going to be character death, but that doesn't mean you're out of the game. You just roll up a new character and hop on in. It is sad to part with your adventurer for sure, but, you know, them's the breaks. And we have absolutely had TPKs, and but Dole, my hero, I never let him die. There have been times where we would play and I did not like the scenario, I did not like our odds, and I would roll up a new character to sub in for Dole because I did not want to risk Dole in that encounter. I know that's bad, but yeah, it's just an absolute blast. So that is, I better just probably wrap this up now. I hope this was interesting to some of you. And if you've made it this long, you know, just my undying respect and appreciation. But I could talk about Dicey Depths forever, but also Dwarven Forge. Look how gorgeous this is. I mean, are you kidding me? And I guess one final thing. I will show this off. Do I have the light on still? Yes. All right, so I did this whole video of how I did all my tubs and all my accessories. So we'll go watch that video if you haven't already, where I have all the accessories divided up into different piece counts. And there's some tubs over there. All my warlock tiles are now also in tubs by piece count. Boom, 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 boom. And what did I even come in here for? I have no idea. Oh my gosh. Oh, all the Dwarven Forge stuff. Well, I guess I was going to kind of show how... Look at all the pieces we still have. These are the Cavern straight walls. We still have all of those. That's still a whole collection's worth of straight walls. And right below that are floors. We have all these floors left. So we have so much material that we could still use. And of course, we didn't touch any of the dungeon stuff. But I honestly don't think that's why I came in here. But now I can't remember why. But anyways, the last thing is, yeah, it just looks so impressive. And I know it's not cheap. And again, I don't remember how many sets this took to build this for sure. Good God, I have no idea. But I love these passageway pieces where you have the straight passageways, but then you have these angle ones. And that's the key to making the curve. and into these rooms. And again, it was a tough thing. I was like, well, I need to make 10 more rooms. How am I going to do that? And then I started building this room, and this room was getting a little unwieldy. And then I was like, well, I want to do water. And then I was like, oh my gosh, look at how much room those 2 rooms took up. So some of these rooms are oddly shaped, which is actually probably okay, you know, for a cavern environment. And the passageway pieces were able to loop around in crazy angles and stuff, which worked out well. Again, there is no actual like line of sight or anything in Dicey Depths combat. So when the time comes to actually have a combat encounter in here, I can move all this stuff away. Just push that out of the way. And I tried to make I think this is the smallest room. Because it is just, what is that? 3 pieces wide by 4 pieces long. So that, you know, because you could have potentially up to 10 miniatures in a single room. Because if you have up to 6 tier 1 monsters, and if you did have a party of 4 adventurers, can 10 miniatures fit in here? And they can. And so that's why I wanted a room no smaller than this, to stuff all those guys in there, just for visibility. But that'll do it. That is the caverns below Falconrest Watchtower. I didn't even talk about the history of Falconrest Watchtower. When in one of the bandit passages, it's going to say something like, and now we wonder, was the watchtower to keep an eye on above ground enemies from getting into the province, or watching what was down below and making sure it didn't get out? And I just absolutely love that. And of course, Falconrest, just because it's a tall watchtower and falcons were, you know, known to roost up at the top there. But anyway, so that's it. That's Dicey Depths. That is my Dwarven Forge, Caverns, and a little bit of dungeon build. I hope you enjoyed. Thank you all so much for watching. I do truly appreciate it. And until next time.